There's garage and then housing.
Which, you know, the second floor actually kind of like, you know, they had, the master bath, reasonable, but, you know, the downstairs having a kitchen, living room, there's almost two ones.
Ask me when the third one comes. Right now, I feel totally comfortable now. Is it you? Did you have two?
Ms.
No.
Terry, you good to go at 7 o'clock? Okay. I got 7 o'clock on my phone, so we're going to start. I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before I take attendance, I would like to begin this evening with a moment of silence. I was made aware yesterday of the passing of a former city employee, Robert Bob Boyven, who served as city treasurer here for a number of years before departing the organization in the mid-1990s. Mr. Boyven and his family were well respected in the Saline community. He was a very nice person, and we'd like to extend our deepest condolences to his children and his wife during this very difficult time. So if you'd please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Members present this evening from City Council include Council Members Gearboss, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Morrow. From City staff, we have the City Manager, the City Clerk, our new Community Development Director, who we welcome to his first meeting, Mr. Adkin, Parks and Rec Director Lambert, along with our Assistant City Manager, City Treasurer, L. Cole. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved?
As submitted?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion? I'm sorry, who's the second? Is that Lesh or CO? Lesh?
Lesh.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to public comments on agenda items. Before I read the normal verbiage, I did want to indicate that there are copies of the agenda on the back table along with hearing devices, and we also encourage you to sign in. For those of you who have attended meetings in the past or frequent city functions here, you'll notice that the setup is a little bit different. We now have an additional TV mounted to my right, and the traditional podium has been replaced with this very nice table which raises and lowers. You can adjust it on the left there, and that's where you'll come to share any comments or questions, concerns regarding agenda items this evening. So again, the first public comment period under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time to make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments this evening on any enumerated items on tonight's agenda? Please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Irene Finkbeiner, and I'm a resident in the city of Saline. I live a mile away from the proposed development that you're seeing on the screen that will also be part of the new business this evening. My question about this development is that it is unclear to me whether this is going to be a development of 51 townhomes that will be owner-occupied condominiums, or will they be 51 rental units? I think it's important to clarify this distinction, and one item in the packet that you received tonight speaks to something by Carlisle Wortman Associates, who work with the builder, in which it states at the bottom of page 5, the applicant has indicated that the site will not be a condominium. I'm wondering if this is a change from what was earlier proposed, that these would be condominiums. I believe in an earlier proposal, the city had asked for more details about the condominium development. So clarification on what it is and what it isn't going to be would be very helpful. Another question that I have about this development is the question about the buffer that the city does require about the peripherals of developments, and that's a 100-foot buffer. This development will be bordering on the south of the property line, Brecken Village, which has condominium residences along that border with the new development. In between the two, there is an unpaved city street called Breckenshire Drive. For years, this has been an unpaved access, limited access, gated for only service vehicles or vehicles to help with the water treatment plant. Currently, the developer wants to pave 400 to 440 feet of this street to have building number 5 of the development with 60 residential units along that street. It would be renamed to Harper Drive. By paving this, it would allow motored vehicles to have access to the units, plus to Ridgewater Drive in the center of the development, and also give access to city service equipment that needs to come on that street for those units and the other development. So I think it's important that the buffer be maintained at 100 feet to separate the two developments, especially with the roadway now that will be much more active than it has been in the past. And finally, something else that I'm wondering about, I understand that these units will be priced eventually at the market value in Saline. I own a condo in Saline, not right next to this development, but a mile away. So I am concerned about the pricing goals of this developer as to what the range of pricing will be. There will be stacked units, one unit above the other in 16 of the units, as well as individual units. So these are questions that I hope will be addressed this evening or in meetings that follow this meeting about this development.
Very good. Thank you, Irene.
Thank you.
Are there any additional citizen comments this evening on agenda items? You'll have 3 minutes. You may simply come forward to the podium.
My name is Mary Widener, and I live on Lampkins. I'm here to talk about the proposed development. I've created a petition and informed my surrounding community to this development. In its current form, 180 people in the community oppose this development. So the current form with 51 units and the closeness to the road. I am aware of the new apartment buildings around the city, and I have driven around a lot of them. There's this restricted parking, which encourages people to park in the street and other neighborhoods. Several new neighborhoods off of Maple, and the traffic there, or several are off of Maple. The traffic on that road is so fast that it's hard to turn out, and it's really hard when there's visibility issues due to the hills. So it's dangerous, and I want to mention that the traffic study proposed, it'll only do us any good if the issues it presents are addressed and the project is downsized. Creating a 51 apartment complex right next to the Brecken Village area and across the road from a large neighborhood of well over 300 houses will create more traffic issues. We already have a lot of them. There's numerous other issues I have brought up before to the Planning Commission. The concern that a building this big with a large parking lot will cause dangerous runoff to the nearby wetlands and cause issues with the protected wildlife. The fact that the 3 stories will create a shadow on Saline Ann Arbor Road and will cause the road to freeze more easily in the winter and cause, again, traffic issues. I'm also, I'm not happy that we have a law that includes 100 feet from the surrounding structures and roads, and yet it was waived for this project because it was done because of how small the space that there is to work with. The small area fitting the large project should not be what is concerning you. What should concern everyone is the community's safety and additions that make sense for the area around them. So I really hope you will consider the size of this project. It exceeds this available land, and for what will fit in our community, so.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate your comments. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening? You will have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Rimney Widener, and I live on Hollywood Drive in Saline. I'm here today to voice my concern over the current design plan for the proposed development at 865 North Ann Arbor Road. My biggest concern is that the proposed buildings are already considerably taller than the existing buildings in the area, and granting the waiver for the 100-foot buffer will only serve to emphasize that size difference. Other developments by Livonia builders in the area, like Cascade Point and Westgate, have larger setbacks and place taller buildings away from the road. Existing structures in the area of the proposed development are all at least twice as far back from the road than what is proposed for this new development. My other concern about this complex is the waiver for a third of the units to have reduced garage lengths. Large pickup trucks are not the only vehicles that are over 18 feet long. There are also several SUVs that can be 18 feet or longer, including the 2024 Lincoln Navigator, the 2024 Ford Expedition, the 2024 Chevy Suburban, the 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer, and the 2024 Cadillac Escalade. Since these are family-size units, it's very possible that some of the new residents could own one or more of these larger vehicles. While the developer has said that a lot of people work remotely as support for the reduced garage sizes, working remotely does not mean that you don't own a vehicle, especially in a community like Saline where there isn't a bus system. Prior to approving these plans, I hope the council will reconsider granting the waivers and request changes so that these buildings blend into the surrounding area better, as well as accommodating the needs of future residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Any additional citizen comments? It needs to be limited on to agenda items. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, council friends, my name is Chang Ming Fan. I want to urge all of you to support this 186 Indigenous Peoples Day. It is very important, not for me, as one of the BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and the people of color. For everybody, this nation was built based on the principle all human beings are equal. This nation right now come to this day to say whether or not we have one day celebration, two things. One is Columbus Day, one is Indigenous Day. I watched some video. I also looked at some paper. I don't know when did Mr. Mayor talk about this, what the future mayor principle is. I fully support the resolution, but not completely become law. I do think that we don't have any argument, but just make it clear. There's no conflicts with the American spirit and the current controversy whether or not we should celebrate. People are all people. We have differences. But there's something going on of this nation, of the whole world. People are not treated equally. And that causes a lot of problems. It's not also good to the white people. Therefore, as a Chinese American, I feel I gotta say, the church and the city council, not the only section, what the word, I'm sorry, the place for all people. Sanctuary, that's the correct term. Everywhere should be. Unfortunately, in the city of Saline or in the state of Michigan, there are some problems. I think the white people leading, especially the city council, we support and voted for you, continue. However, there are some momentums. We have to build on, continue the legacy the founding father did many years ago. They are going to have some problem, I feel it, but I cannot go to much detail. Therefore, again, I urge all of you support this idea and solve the problem peacefully, we should celebrate old people come to the land, become the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Changming. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? Then I would defer to the city clerk because I believe we had one written comment submitted in advance of tonight's meeting. Is that correct, Clerk Royal?
That is correct.
You may proceed.
This is from Liz Hilgren, and she says, I'm not opposed to the property being developed. I know that would have happened sooner or later. However, the proposed plan seems like too much in a small space for a neighborhood with serious traffic issues. In short, the height and density are too much for this corridor. My concerns are listed below. 1, the units are too many and too tall. The property to the north that is referred to in the attached documents is composed of single-story units, not 3 stories. 2- and 3-story apartments will engulf the neighborhood and distract from the small-town neighborhood feel when you enter town. 2, the traffic and the speeding. Adding 51 units to an already stressed corridor is too much. The document says there will be an increase of 16 to 20 people coming out of the complex during peak hours. This is not believable, assuming 2 working adults per household. Even if that is true, it does not address the consistent traffic increase during all hours that would result from adding 51 households in such a small area. The documents say that the original zoning was for commercial and that there would be no increase in traffic from a commercial use to a residential use. This does not seem true to me. There will be much more traffic from 51 residential units. The traffic/speeding is very bad on this street, so we have a very bad traffic control issue, and it will get worse with no plan to address the traffic and the speeds. A traffic study is needed to come up with a plan to address the traffic and the speeds. The traffic should be slowed down and possibly spread out, some diversion. The study might suggest better sizing for the complex and the units. The water for many of us on the street is very bad. I have spoken to others in my neighborhood who have expressed concerns. Attached is a picture of my new bathtub that I just filled with water. How are you going to address the water issue? The historic neighborhoods in Saline are small. They should be considered and protected. They add interest and character to our town. Increasing an already serious traffic issue does not protect these old homes. Thank you.
We thank Ms. Hilgren for her comments this evening. Excuse me. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? This is going to be the last call before we transition to the consent agenda and then our normal business. Very good. Well, appreciate the comments this evening. Hang tight because many of those concerns and questions will be addressed as part of agenda item 24-192. At this time, we proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Moved as distributed.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Can we change it to submitted, Mr. CO? Very good. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-192. This is 865 North Ann Arbor Street, Livonia Builders Preliminary PUD. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Planner Arbach and to approve or not to approve the preliminary planned unit development for 51 multifamily development at 865 North Ann Arbor Street, Saline, Michigan 48176, parcel number 18-13-36-301-001, subject to conditions defined by the Planning Commission in its approval on September 11th, 2024.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt, and I'll let Rice be the second. I'm going to proceed to City Manager O'Toole to summarize, and then if Mr. Gearbaugh would like to make some comments as the Planning Commission rep, we would welcome that. City Manager O'Toole, for the public's benefit, can you talk a little bit about the process here and what will transpire subsequent tonight, assuming this motion is approved?
Certainly. So the developer is currently seeking a preliminary PUD approval. What that means is they've presented a plan that either meets or has the potential to meet our PUD requirements. The process is that it goes to Planning Commission first. They recommend for approval. In this case, they recommended for approval with conditions. Then the preliminary needs to be reviewed by City Council. This isn't the final step in the process. No, we're close. We do expect a fair number of changes between now and when a final PUD is actually considered and approved, and that could be some time before it comes back. A few of the conditions that Planning Commission included in this case are that a comprehensive traffic study be completed, both to look at traffic and the layout of the roads, the left and right turns for the development. as well as some smaller items like additional landscaping and easement for green space for the city in the future as part of our multi-use trail system, and compliance with some comments from the city engineer and the fire department. All of which has been, based on my conversations, received favorably by the developer, and again, we do believe has the intent to be met in the future. So I will note at this time, again, this is a preliminary PUD subject to council consideration, then back to Planning Commission for final. If you have any questions about the individual conditions, I'm happy to answer those, or if you have additional conditions or considerations you'd like to discuss, we're here to help.
Very good. Mr. Gearbaugh, any comments as the liaison from the liaison to the Planning Commission?
A number of the issues that were brought up tonight were discussed from the Planning Commission's perspective, especially the traffic notification, some issues related to the drive, the height of the buildings. There are some aesthetical aspects of the buildings that are being built, the placement of the sidewalks, the frontage and setback. So a number of those have been on here, and especially concerns related to public safety, access for water, looping the main, all the items that we generally have considered. And again, as I will defer to our city manager and our planner, these items are all part of the preliminary, which some of these will have to be sorted out as we go forward, especially things related to environmental or concerns such as that were brought up related to any kind of endangered species or inappropriate water runoff or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I will note.
No, make sure you have your cell phones away from the microphones, folks.
I will note that there's one additional step that will take place, and that's Washtenaw County's Water Resource Division will review for the water runoff.
Is that better? So there will be additional consideration from another governmental unit aside from us for that purpose. So stormwater will be reviewed by the county.
Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Berry, I noticed you, my apologies for the technical difficulties. You able to join us this evening? Are there any comments you would like to make for the public record?
Good evening, Council. Do you have the displays? Good evening. I just wanted to add a couple of comments based on some of the comments from the last meeting as well as some of the residents just recently. On one of the items, the reference of 51 units, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's well below the allowed density of the parcel. I believe we're at like no, not even 8 point. I think we were right around 8 units an acre, and the allowable zoning is 14. So we're barely over half. There is a concern about the 3 stories. I'll show you the picture of that building right there is exactly what it's going to look like on Ann Arbor Saline Road. The 3rd story is in the back, and the reason that is because the topography drops. The garages are in the back. That becomes the 3rd story. So in the front, and what everybody will see on Ann Arbor Saline Road is exactly that, a 2-story structure, just like what's across the street. So the only way you'll see the 3rd story is if you come around the back or into the development itself. Then the other side will be all 1-story units, and then the building, which is this is the 6-unit building that's on the side street that the city access street. Okay, and this is the ranch-style unit right there that will be on the south side. That's the 4-unit. There's also a 9-unit building. So pretty much that's what we have. The market rents that we're getting in the area over in Cascade and or in Westgate is anywhere between $2,000 and $2,400 a month per unit, depending on the size in the unit itself. So it will be a nice development, as those 2 that I just mentioned are. That's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Mr. Berry, I apologize if I missed it, but to the individual who spoke at the top of our public comment period, is it the intent that these be owner-occupied or rental units?
As of right now, they're planned to be rental units. As of right now. That could change, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Very good. Well, unless there are additional comments from either the city manager, our council rep, or the petitioner, we will open it up for questions. Are there questions from the dais for any of the three individuals who spoke? No? Oh, Mr. Seal? Yeah. Well, I asked for questions. Go ahead, Mr. Seal.
Thank you. Mr. Berry, these appear to be photographs. Do these buildings exist somewhere else already?
Yeah, we built them in Plymouth. So this is the rear of the unit right here, where the garages are in the rear. So that's what is visible inside the development from the road was the first picture that I showed you.
Okay.
Yes, they are in Plymouth, down, right outside of downtown Plymouth.
Thank you, sir. That's it, Mr.
Additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. So you just answered some of my questions about the cost, that these are going to be rentals and the price point, because it does look like between Cascade Point and Westgate, they're roughly the same size units, correct?
Cascade and Westgate are the same ranch-style units. These are right in that neighborhood. They're a hair smaller than this unit right here. The front half of the building, if this was the building right here, it's cut this way. So there's a front unit and a back unit. The front unit is about the same size as the Colonials in Westgate. The rear unit is slightly smaller.
Okay, thank you. In the report, there was a comment about the road, that they wanted a curve road versus the straight. Are you opposed to that? Is that something that's being considered?
Well, in that discussion, they had mentioned it, and we kind of talked back and forth about it. The biggest problem on this site is it is so restricted, both because of topography, the power lines that are running through it, just limit what we can do. So when we were talking, Ben Carlisle was here, he had even mentioned that a narrower road will have the same effect as far as reducing traffic, because it's a little, although we're at, I think, 28 feet, if I'm not mistaken, so we're within a foot, I believe, of the requirement, or maybe we did meet it. I left my phone over there. Let me grab my phone and I'll tell you
Nope,
exactly.
that's fine, thank you.
The current width meets our requirements, but the original design was narrower.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what, yeah, okay. Yeah, so we got to 28 feet, I believe, on the width. No, 25, I'm sorry. 25 back of curb to back of curb. Right? Is that what? Or was it? No, it's at 28. This was 25 was the old design. So it's 28 feet back of curb, back of curb. So to be able to get that, we would need substantially wider than that to have enough of a radius to turn it and make it shift. It's just a size thing. If I had the room, I wouldn't care.
Okay, I understand. This will be a private road?
Yes.
Will there be streetlights?
Well, what we do in this situation, so if you can see it, every garage door has 2 lights on it. And so the fronts of the units right there and the backs of these units right here, so they're all on a photo eye similar to a street light. So those will all go on, just like Cascade. Those will all go on at dusk and go off in the morning. Where parking structures are, parking areas are, we will have those illuminated as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just going through a couple of my notes. And so there were, and I guess this would be for the city manager or the community development director, is just understanding about, there was a whole big thing about future land map and whether this was the right category for it. Is there something that we're looking at? Because it's talking about city density versus low density versus high density in that particular area.
Yes, this is compatible with either city density or high density based on the nearby uses, and that is, when you look at our future land use map, what we had anticipated for the urban development area.
Okay. There was also something about issues being addressed by or identified by the city engineer in the Saline Area Fire Department. Has the fire department reviewed these yet?
Yes, the fire department has reviewed, and their comment was that they wanted to see a turnaround at the end of the new drive that's being created, which the developer indicated they were amenable to. They just didn't have it in time for the preliminary.
Okay. And then there was an issue about parking, additional parking. Is there a recommendation? Because it seems like Mr. Berry's actually offering more guest parking.
Correct.
And so is that sort of the recommendation that the city would want to go with, or would they want more green space?
I believe because of from what we talked about with Planning Commission, certainly Mayor Morrow or Councilmember Gearbaugh can correct me, but it seemed that it was the intent of Planning Commission that what is proposed is acceptable and would be looked on favorably.
Okay, I appreciate that. I did make a big note about the garage length, because that, for me, is a concern, that there are a lot of people with larger vehicles, and that could limit that area. Will there be any, it said something about there's going to be not less than 40% green space. So are we looking of total land devoted to open space, excuse me? So is that including wetlands, or is that just like?
Yes, yeah, everything is included in open space. Anywhere that's not buildable area or permeable surfaces counts towards that open space designation.
Okay, and we're not looking at having any kind of requirements for play areas, any internal things like that?
No, the big recreational amenity for us would be securing that easement for the future leg of our multi-use trail.
Okay. And then there was a question that was raised by someone that I also had a note about, which is understanding what's now the service drive. That would become an actual, that's what will become a street that will be paved?
Yeah, so to clarify, that's not actually a city street, alley, or drive now. It's technically just land owned by the water treatment plant. That has been used in some cases as a service drive simply because it's a little easier for certain vehicles to get on and off North Ann Arbor Street. The city views this as a benefit for its access purposes to that facility, because obviously a paved surface is easier for us to get over than an unpaved surface if we do need to use it. It would still have a gate at the end at where you reach the water treatment plant property, and we've already discussed with the developer. I believe that's one of the engineering comments, is the need to ensure that it's built to a standard to withstand the weight of those types of trucks. But it would still remain a private road and be the responsibility of the development to maintain.
Okay. I'm almost done, I promise. Two more quick questions. Do we have any concerns as a city about permitting EV chargers in buildings that are attached to each other? Not like
Nothing that
garage
came up
garage?
during fire or engineering review.
Okay. I didn't know if that was something to be concerned about. And then my last question is, I know that we're talking about doing a traffic study. Is there any concern right now that with the way that this is going to be structured at the end of the street, that it's really going to create a blockage as to seeing? Because right now, that's sort of a blind corner with just the house there. And there is actually a lot of open space around it, but it is still hard to see. So is that something that is going to be a concern?
Yeah, so comprehensive traffic study is going to look at turns. It's going to look at traffic in and out of. It's going to look at the alignment of the drives, the distance of the drive from the corner, all of that. So I would say reserve judgment until we get back those results to talk a little bit more holistically about what the recommended changes would look like.
Okay. And is the traffic study something that the city is doing or that the developer?
The developer will provide, and then our engineers will review.
Thank you very much.
I believe Councilmember Harmount had some questions, and then I'll jump to Councilmember Rice.
Yeah, I had a question. So a lot of it's been answered as far as the impact of the environment and the balance of the community resources. I know that's going to be looked at a little bit more intently. What about this 100-foot buffer waiver? If we removed, it wasn't granted, what would the impact on the development be?
I can't tell you exactly how many units would be lost. My question back to maybe Colleen, is it 100 foot around the entire perimeter, or is it, what exactly is that definition? Then I can tell you.
So the city's PUD ordinance recommends a 100-foot buffer in cases where the use isn't compatible with the surrounding use types. In this case, our planner noted it is compatible with the surrounding use types. This would be more for, if you had a development going in next to a completely different type of zoning. But this is multifamily, next to multifamily, or next to city density. So yes, that's a recommended buffer in cases where the differing use types exist, but it is recommended and has the option to be waived or reduced for exactly this type of case. Yeah, and to the developer's point, if it was required, it could substantially change the look or the footprint of what could be developed there.
Yeah, and the only reason one of the reasons I'm asking that might be some of the concerns of this, the residents, but there's a couple different developments we have with condos that are very crammed in and seem very close to the sidewalk or to the road, and I just don't know if does that 100-foot buffer create that distance from the building to the road?
The buffer is distinct from the setback requirements. So the setback requirements still exist regardless of what's being built there. And in this case, the developer's current proposal meets all of the setback requirements or exceeds them in some cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmon. Councilmember Rice.
In the fire chief's review, did he, was he able to see these photos and assure that fire rescue to the third floor would be appropriate if he needed to come from the back?
Yes, he was made aware of the overall height and the plans for the development. That wasn't one of the comments that came back.
I'm wondering if, for the purposes of sharing all the information that we have here today with the community, do you have a digital file of these images that we could add to the PDFs or something?
I'm sure we do.
Okay. Because this is very helpful to me. This is not at all what I was envisioning, but I can see it now where the front looks like a house and the back it drops off.
Right. And really, honestly, if the topography wasn't the way it was, we wouldn't have done this. This product works perfect for that topography. I had a very similar piece of land in Pittsfield Township that did the same thing. It dropped off, 12 feet from the road and this product, as you can see, ends up working really well with that topography, which is why we didn't put it on the other side, because it doesn't make sense, because it's reverse of what it would be. So,
Those are my only two notes.
Very good. Any additional questions for staff, our planning commission rep, or the applicant? Mr. Gearbaum?
Just one, I know we were attempting to try and reach out to DTE. Have we had any success yet?
Yes, they did respond to my inquiry at least and let me know that they would put together a cost estimate for what it would take to relocate or bury the lines. Though they let me know it would probably take about a month on their end.
Additional questions?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and then Mr. Seal.
Thank you. My concern with this project is that we've been talking the talk, but it feels like we're not walking the walk. This is a wonderful project, but its price point is on the high end of, we keep saying we want more attainable housing. When you start looking at $2,000, $3,000 a month rentals, I don't think that is necessarily obtainable for all. And it's so wondering if we really need to be looking at a different model at this point also.
Well, I mean, there's been a great deal of conversation among council on and off about how we approach that question of affordability and attainability within the community. It would still be my recommendation we try to put together some sort of task force or identify what specific programming we would want to put in place. It's very hard for us to develop that reactively once a development has come to us. It really is the time for us to figure out what our proactive approach and guidelines are going to be, and frankly, that will require on the city's part some form of incentivizing or structuring our programming in a way to make it appealing to developers to meet those goals.
Mr. Seal?
Thank you, Your Honor. What might the practical upshot be of a traffic study? Would it just be a recommendation for certain traffic control devices?
It may be traffic control devices, it may be an alternative layout for the site, it may be restricting, like, for example, if the current configuration of the South Drive stayed the same, it may need to be restricted to a right turn only, or you couldn't take a left turn into there. It would look at all of those things.
Okay, thank you.
One last question before we vote on the motion, simply to acknowledge receipt. Mr. Gearbaum.
And I had spoken to some individuals, their concern is the traffic volume on North and Arbor Street, that the inability, that there's no stop between Woodland and then Bennett Street. And so the ability to be able to, have a break in traffic, especially during rush hours and in the morning, especially, and with the schools. And now knowing how they're repurposing that campus, that whole stretch of the road, I think needs to be considered as part of this traffic study, not only this development, but all these other considerations. So hopefully we'll look at it from a more holistic approach, not just at this intersection.
Yes, and that's why I say when the developer provides their traffic study for this particular site and its impacts on North Ann Arbor, the next place it goes is to our engineering team to do the same and then, make an assessment from there, whether we agree with the recommendations inherent in that study, whether we have any follow-up comments, or if that means different things on the city side for what we may need or want to do on public streets.
Excellent.
One quick note.
Go ahead.
Right at that property is where the 25 and 35 change happens as well, like midway through that property. It's pretty much just before our parcel that goes out to the water treatment plant. So that's something that we ought to take a deeper look at as well, like changing does that 25 need to go back up maybe towards Woodland? Where does that need to go?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rice, simply to acknowledge receipt of the memo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by CO to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearboss. Additional discussion. City Manager, can you remind council and the public, what is the normal turnaround between preliminary site plan and final site plan? When can the community expect, roughly speaking, this proposal to be reconsidered by Planning Commission?
That's really going to depend entirely on when we hear back from the developer. From our end, once we receive those, it'll get reviewed again by our planners and engineering team, go to Planning Commission, assuming there's one, possibly a second Planning Commission meeting for that final site plan approval. On our end, once we receive the comments back, it's probably at least another 2 months between Planning Commission and City Council approvals.
Okay, so question for you, Mr. Berry. When do you anticipate submitting all the necessary paperwork for final site plan review?
Oh, I'm going to ask you a question to answer that question.
Okay.
For your final site plan, do we have to be permitted by the agencies? Or is this strictly separated from it? Reason why I ask is if that's the case, I'm going to tell you we won't be here for 6 to 8 months because it's going to take at least 5 to 6 months, well, probably 4 to 5 months to get a water and a sewer permit.
Right.
We have to be fully engineered, approved by, who's your engineer? OHM, right?
Yeah.
Approved by OHM, then they'll submit to the state for the water and sewer permits. I'm going to guess the engineering to get through the reviews and the design is going to be at least 60 to 90 days, and then that permitting process starts. So
Yeah,
if
staff can correct me if I'm wrong. We've not normally required as part of the final site plan approval process that you have already obtained the necessary permits from either the county or state government.
Okay, so with that being said, I would say probably somewhere with the holidays and everything, it'll probably be like January, February, somewhere in there.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we're clear for the public's benefit when they can expect to follow up on this issue. And as always, friends, please be sure to follow our agendas and support materials on documents on demand. And if you have any problem navigating that site, please reach out to any of us on council or the city clerk. I'll just say for the purposes of discussion on the motion, which is moved by CO, seconded by Gearboss to approve, I believe that this warrants a preliminary site plan approval. Many of the questions and concerns that were raised from the dais and from the audience this evening are legitimate, fair, reasonable, and ought to be addressed and resolved between now and the final site plan approval process. I think it's important to remember it's a much easier hurdle and burden to meet preliminary site plan versus final. This is concept. Final is all of the specifics and the details being worked out with a negligible impact, negative impact to the broader community. So look forward to continuing to work through these issues and hope to be able to review a final site plan sometime in the next 2 to 4 months. Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? Councilmember Rice.
I would also like to address the attainable housing issue as well. I think these smaller parcels that have come up in the city of Saline over the last couple of years are not really what we're talking about when we're talking about attainable housing. That needs an entire process. We need to sit down. We need to really put our heads together and come up with processes for that. Like the city manager was saying, my focus is on diversity in types of housing. different types of housing throughout the community to bring in different types of people, to bring in different experiences and backgrounds and families or single families or, that's what my focus is at the moment. And I think that this is a pretty niche spot that would help meet some of those needs by keeping these rentals. Hopefully we can continue to focus on that, keeping these rentals. We've got a lot of transient folks who come in to work in the technology sector at the universities, things like that. Bringing that experience and those different diverse perspectives into the city is super important to me. Also is attainable housing. So I think these are kind of two separate issues that we can work on collectively at the same time while tackling some of these smaller properties, and then look at the bigger picture in some of the larger properties that may come up and some different opportunities that we might have to do some different, more affordable types of housing throughout those. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Mr. Very, thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance this evening, and thank you all who came to tonight's meeting either concerned or had questions, were inquisitive about this plan development. We have a motion on the floor moved by CO, seconded by Gearbaugh to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-193, Employee Recognition Program. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt from the memo from City Manager O'Toole and to authorize or not authorize the City Treasurer to amend line item 101-172-962-208.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. City Manager O'Toole, the floor is yours.
So as one of the city's strategic planning goals, we did identify employing a skilled workforce and specifically establishing an employee incentive or recognition program. After looking at a few different options, both including just managing something internally or using a software-based system, we've identified a software that we feel very comfortable using and we feel would meet our expectations, both as an employee recognition tool, but also as a peer-to-peer employee engagement tool and an employee engagement metric tool on the back end for management. This is a web-based platform, so it can be used by all of our full-time employees across the city. And it can be used, again, for both peer-to-peer or manager-to-employee recognition through a points-based framework. What we're proposing to do is provide employees 100 points a month, which is equivalent to $10 a month, to recognize fellow employees for work that they do that aligns specifically with our core values or our strategic goals. And those would be things that are set up inside of the system by myself when we're first launching it to ensure that any piece of recognition that goes through the system aligns with that. And the reason for that being is because this is a really, again, like I said, about being an engagement tool with staff. So getting buy-in among staff on our vision and our values. And in doing so, making sure that when they're recognizing others, they're doing it in the context of that lens. This would be an addition to our existing budget for the year. There has been some questions about, whether funds could be reappropriated from other uses. Certainly, that could be the case. But I did want to bring this item, even though it is within my threshold otherwise, to move those funds around if we needed to, because it is a strategic goal, and because I want council to have buy-in on our engagement strategies with employees, because I think that is, frankly, a big part of what the employees of this organization need to see and know that, council is in support of that.
Very good. I appreciate your work on this. Are there questions for the city manager? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I think the city manager and I spoke about this a little bit. I think that if this is a project that she wants to start, that's fine. Because it's not currently a budgeted item, I think it needs to come from a current program. And so I think it needs to be fully funded from the gift card program that we currently have as a starting point, and then we can look at expanding it moving forward. I do have a couple of questions. So when we talk about full-time, how does seasonal workers fit into that?
Well, for launching purposes, I'd only be looking at regular full-time employees to start.
Okay. And then do we have something within the program or some sort of statement that there's a clear understanding that this program does not correlate to overall performance of the position? Because what I don't want to see is an underperforming employee that is able to capitalize on this program, and then it's just not a balance.
Sure, and that's the type of messaging that's easy enough to put into the platform. But one thing I'd say on that is, I'm having gone through numerous employee evaluations with staff, there are people who perform well in some categories and not in others. It's entirely feasible that you may have an employee that is highly recognized within the system because they're a good team player, but has deficiencies in other categories that would be noted by their supervisor.
Like I said, I just want to understand that there isn't that direct correlation to it. And then, will there be any, understanding how you and I had talked about this, and so I guess I want to understand. So each department will be given X amount of points per month.
Every full-time employee would be given 100 points, or the equivalent of $10 a month, to award to other employees, and it's use it or lose it. So if you don't award any of your peers during that monthly period, the dollars do not get used by the city.
Okay.
But you, as an employee who receives an award, can accrue that for a larger benefit over time.
Okay. Because that's what I wanted to, and then you self-promote yourself?
No.
Okay. So it has
Yes,
to be.
it has to be to someone else, and it has to have one of our pre-designated hashtags or core value statements.
And is there any way in which, like, so what I don't want to see is the same people getting it month over month over month. And I mean, obviously, you're going to see those top performers, but I don't want it to be a popularity contest. So how
Sure.
are you going to guarantee that that's?
So supervisors would be in charge of monitoring the back-end metrics to make sure that there was no abuse of the system. But again, viewing this as an engagement tool, if an employee is taking the time to go in and recognize one of their peers for a job well done, then in my mind, it's accomplished its goal, which is to get employees talking about who is helping and how they're helping and how they're meeting the city's broader goals.
Okay. And my only personal feeling is that I really don't want to engage PTO days. I think that this should be totally its own thing. I don't want it to be a legacy cost.
That's perfectly fine.
That's where I just don't want it. I'd like to have a very definitive, use it or lose it your points. You get 6 months to use them and boom. And then what happens? Are they a payout upon upon leaving the company kind of a thing? I just want to make sure that we have very clear parameters.
It's the responsibility of the individuals to cash out their rewards. They have the discretion to cash them out at any time. The balances go with them. I will say the examples of the custom rewards are just in there because it's something the software allows us to do. We don't have to deploy any custom rewards if we don't want to.
Thank you very much.
Additional questions for the city manager? Councilmember Harmount?
So we talked about, this is an interesting tool for employee engagement. Where I've worked before, we've engaged in similar type of programs, and they seem to trail off sometimes as far as engagement's concerned. How will you actually gauge the effectiveness of the expenditures?
So what attracted me to this particular software was the back-end metrics, specifically for that region, to see how frequently people are accessing the software, whether they're talking about one thing or one person or kind of spreading the wealth, so to speak. So those types of engagement tools on the back end are what I would be looking at to monitor. And I would say for my first year goal, I'm hoping to see like 40 to 50% utilization, ramping up to 60 to 75% utilization as like a stable point. I don't anticipate everyone will buy into it. We just have some people that are totally tech averse, and it's not going to happen. But there is there's a real incentive to getting involved in the platform. And, in that regard, there's a little bit more of a carrot than a stick to employee engagement.
Anything else, Councilmember Harmon?
I just have to, if we vote in favor of it, as far as I agree with Councilman Person Dillon, that we don't, they're not incurred additional funds for this year, but they're found for a different budget offset.
Fair enough. Okay. Additional questions from the dais? Councilmember Gearbaugh?
City Manager, what kind of reporting will be available to recognize that this is recognizing people for doing, good work? How will council or even the public be able to see some of these? Because I think that would be helpful to see how we're recognizing internally
Yeah, so I certainly be able to, just like we do with our regular monthly reporting, share a monthly report out. It won't necessarily show you guys each of the individual comments that are made, but it will say like the number of employees that were engaged, the number of employees that were recognized, the total rewards given, things of that nature, and a summary of the core values or the hashtag types that are used. So you'll get to see what's trending in that regard.
And I guess I would request that a year from now, we would have a review from you to come back and see how successful it is.
I would anticipate that I'm going to report on this every time we go through the strategic planning reporting, simply because it's a strategic goal. So I'm not too concerned about recurring follow-up on how it's doing.
And of course, we discussed also about the source of funding for this instead of adding it as a budget item. But it comes back to the whole idea of a total compensation package, and I believe that this is part of that whole thing. And you did raise the issue. One of my concerns, and this may be a different topic, but is the issue of your authority to approve personnel incentives, financial incentives, and all those type of things, including gift cards and that I think to be clear on our internal controls and such, that we should have some kind of policy related to that, especially in terms of merit and all these other things that are dollar amounts. I don't think that was the intent of council to necessarily throw that underneath the $25,000 approval. So I would request that be something done in the future.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, there's a motion on the floor then moved by Dillon, seconded by Harmount to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to authorize, not authorize, or is there modified language that you'd like the chair to consider?
I'll move to authorize where the funding be somehow derived through the former gift card program.
So if I may comment on that.
Please.
Again, because I don't anticipate this system will be fully utilized by every employee, I'd be remiss not to just ask that we not fully eliminate the annual employee retention. It's an extremely nominal amount that we give to staff each year to just, thank them for remaining a member of our team. So I understand that, if you want to reduce that amount from $200 down, certainly we could use some of those funds. But it would be unfair to certain staff members who otherwise aren't going to use this tool.
And I believe we talked about a compromise of that, so a portion of half of whatever it is to get us back to the $100 gift cards is fine.
So using a portion of that program to fund this.
I've got to have really specific language here, folks, for a motion. So again, Mr. Gearby, you want to take a stab at it?
What was the total amount of?
So I guess if we used part of that funding for this year, we'd only need an approximate increase of about $4,000 to that line item instead of like $8,000 to that line item. So you could make a motion to amend line item 101-172-962-208 to increase it by $4,000.
Okay, that works.
Is that the motion you'd like to make?
Yep.
Okay. Clerk Royal, are you clear on that motion? Okay, is there a second to that motion? It's got to be a second or the motion dies.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Rice. Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rice. And again, seconding a motion does not obligate you to vote for the motion at the conclusion of our discussion. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. CEO and then Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Question. So the motion as it stands now would limit the program this year?
So the motion as it stands now would, annually, we've been giving a $200 a year retention thank you gift to staff at the end of each calendar year. This would reduce that from $200 to $100 for full-time staff. That's the motion that's being made.
But it would fully fund?
It would partially fund this program.
Okay. Would this program suffer as a result of only be partially funded?
No, we would still fully, yes, yeah.
Okay.
The rest is that budget amount, yes.
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I thought when we talked, you said the difference would be 1,600.
60.
So I wasn't sure how we got to 4,000.
Sorry, I'm doing back of the
That's okay. I'm
napkin
just
math
trying to
here.
understand.
I would have to, I have to look at, I have to look at what we have budgeted now and
I guess for me, just
then.
understanding is that what we're agreeing to then is a reduction, so it's sort of a two-part thing. We're agreeing to a reduction of the gift cards
Yes, realistically,
$100, and then whatever money is left from that funds this, and then we're
Yes.
offsetting with where are the extra dollars?
why, there still would need to be an increase to that budget line item is the point, so that this program could be fully funded.
Okay.
Clerk Royal, can you reread the motion for council's benefit and for the public's?
I have to authorize the city treasurer to amend line item 101, 172, 962, 208 to increase it by 4,000.
And again, that's only 4,000 because we're partway through this year. We'll have to talk about this again during the next budget season if we want to maintain the same system.
Very good. Councilmember Rice.
I seconded this for discussion, but I don't like it. I think what we're trying to do is enhance our employee wellness program. We're not trying to do the shell game here. So additional incentives to keep employees happy, to keep employees around, to build the spirit of being a part of the city of Saline is one thing. Changing programs is another thing. This is in the spirit of creating something new and incentivizing folks and creating the spirit of, wanting to work for the city of Saline. I do not like taking from Peter to pay Paul in this circumstance.
Fair enough. My way of thinking is very similar to yours. I applaud the city manager and her team for her efforts in developing this program and recommending it to council. I'm in favor of supporting her judgment and her prerogative here and moving forward with implementation, but not at the expense of essentially what is a nominal bonus, if you will, for lack of a better way to articulate it, to our employees at the end of the year. I think 200 is not excessive, and I support maintaining that. So I will not be voting in favor of the motion. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and then Councilmember Seo again.
Thank you. And that's a fine thing, but again, we're doing it sort of mid-budget cycle. So then if we want to keep 200, then maybe we need to push a program off until next budget cycle. I mean, the dollars are the dollars. We have to stop finding dollars, because when we find them, they're coming from someplace else. Money isn't falling from the sky. And so I want to kind of be clear about this, and this is not about the employees. If we had more, we would give more, but there's only so many dollars to go around. And at a time when we have so many other things and we are asking the community to constantly give with rate increases and millages, we have to be mindful of everybody. And so understanding that, it does seem like a nominal amount, but nominal amounts, add up. And so I want to be very clear about that I like the idea, and if we can find ways to incentivize our employees, theoretically, they could actually come out money ahead if they got the $10 bonus every month for being an employee, So it could theoretically work itself back out. It's a matter of the buy-in, and that's a whole other issue of trying to engage our employees. So I'm just really concerned with just constantly adding to the budget and understanding where it's coming from.
Mr. Seo?
Thank you, Your Honor. I tend to agree with the mayor and with Councilperson Rice. I think it's almost a left-handed compliment to give in one program, take from the other. I also agree that it's a nominal amount, but I do have an additional question. So say I'm Joe Slick, the coolest employee in the whole joint, and could every other employee opt to give their $10 to me in a month's time?
If every other employee felt that you were achieving, our goals and our, meeting our core values, then yes. I mean, there's not a particular cap on what you could receive in a month. But again, it's about employee engagement. So if the rest of your peers see you doing a great job, I want to know you're being recognized for that. I, as a manager, don't have the capacity to see how well, all 65 full-time employees are doing on a daily basis. So, and one thing I will note, you guys want to talk about nominal impact. There is a net positive benefit to this. I mean, studies do show that this type of programming is likely to reduce retention and turnover. And we pay a lot of money in retention, training, advertising for positions annually. To not have to do that would be a cost savings to us.
Right. Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
I agree that, with Councilmember Dillon, that, we can't just keep adding to budget. But I will say that this is a year where we've just developed a strategic plan. We're probably going to have to add to the budget a couple of times because we've set ourselves some goals that are going to cost a little bit of money. So I understand where Councilmember Dillon is coming from on this. I have faith that the treasurer and deputy city manager and city manager are taking a look at these things. And if something really came up and they were like, well, we set this goal to do this year, that means we're gonna have to cut something else, they would do it. I think this is, like we keep saying, nominal. I mean, I know when people look at these dollars and they think about their taxes and things like that, it's not nominal to the community, but it's nominal to the staff of the city when we're talking about $8,000 versus $4,000. I do, though, echo that sentiment that as we go forward throughout this year and we are trying to meet some of these goals that we've set forth in the strategic plan, that we do just really take a second look and like say, okay, well, maybe we're not going to do this thing this year because we want to meet this strategic goal instead. So I appreciate, that extra set of eyes on things, but as far as this one goes, I'm excited about it. I like it.
Any additional discussion before we vote? Mr. Gearbaugh.
I'm just going back to my whole thing about total compensation, and we include all of these as part of it. I don't disagree with an incentive program, but we're about to see another increase related to benefits. We're having situations where we can't retain or hire police officers. At this point, there's a lot of things coming into play, and we need to be aware of all those. But I also want to make sure that when we do these kind of programs and such, we have to realize that we've also moved everybody to market rates. We've done a lot of adjustments and things, and it's that question that I continue to bring about, is to make sure that we're validating and verifying all of those. So we may have bigger things that we have to worry about, but in this case, this was kind of a compromise because that increase occurred without our approval also. So that's why I go back to the policy, where I want to talk about that we have a policy relating to personnel and compensation issues that they must be approved by this council body.
If there's no additional discussion, we do have a motion on the floor and a modified motion, which was moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Rice. Before we vote, just one last time, everyone's clear on the motion, okay? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Show of hands real quick, just for the record. In favor? Who's in favor? Who voted yes? 2, okay, and then everyone else is a nay? Okay, all right, very good. Motion fails, 2 in favor, 5 opposed. Is there a subsequent motion that someone would like to offer from the floor?
I move to approve as proposed by the city manager.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second that.
Second, I'll let Lesh be the second on that. We'll get you next time, Councilmember Rice. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Who is the nay? 1 nay, okay. Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. We move on to business item 24-194, Dectron Design Engineering Service. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Director Lambert and to approve or not to approve the contract for design engineering services from IMEG in the amount not to exceed $42,500 and authorize, not authorize the city treasurer to amend line item 101-999-998-252.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Moved by Lesh simply to acknowledge, and that was seconded by Gearbaugh. City Manager, would you like to start, or you want me to turn immediately over to our Parks and Rec Director?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
Okay, then dive right in. I'm right here for you, though, when you need me.
Well, thank you so much. So I want to start out by explaining what this piece of equipment is. So we're talking about the giant HVAC system that sits on top of the roof of the rec center. It's called a Dectron unit, and its job is to handle the dehumidification of the aquatic center and the temperatures control of the environment in the aquatic center, and then it also heats our large pool. Our leisure pool and our hot tub have separate heaters, just to kind of make that clear and give you a little bit of background. So this unit was installed in 2004, so that makes it about 20 years old. We did some research, and the Dectron unit is estimated to have about a 12 to 15-year lifespan, and we've well exceeded that. We've had, and part of that is in thanks to some updated ductwork that we did back in 2015, if some of you may recall. We also had factory service performed on the entire unit back in 2017. So I think because of the outstanding maintenance to the unit, and some of the important decisions that were made by some of those before us, we were really able to expand that lifespan. The issue is we are at end of life. So a couple things I just wanted to point out that at the end of this past year, so the end of 2023, our compressor number 1, it failed. And so we are currently only working off of a single compressor, so that's compressor number 2. Last month, it had a fault, and which caused us to have an emergency repair. We also have had several leaks, which is something you see as you're nearing the end of life of a unit such as this. So we, again, at the earlier this year in 2024, compressor 2 lost a significant amount of refrigerant. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly how much was lost. You don't know until you get in there and you look at the repair. Our estimate for that repair was $32,000. At that point, we kind of took a pause, and we started, looking into what are our other options, because these are some high-ticket items for the Dectron, and knowing that it is end of life, we wanted to see what the alternative and start looking into its replacement. Last month, actually just a couple of weeks ago, we had a pump failure. So I guess to simply put it, so we have our Dectron unit, which helps heat the lap pool. It is supported by our building boiler, which is called our RAPAC. And so that kind of chimes in and gives it some help on cold nights, and also when we have significant temperature drops, especially going into the winter season. So the pump that kind of pushes that hot air into the Dectron to help support the heating of the lap pool. We had a failure, and that, we were seeing about a 2-degree loss in our lap pool every day, about 1 to 2 degrees. We were down, normally that pool runs about 82 degrees. We were down to about 77, which doesn't sound like it's a lot, but it really is quite significant for the many users. We relocated some of our aquatic therapy classes over to our leisure pool just because it was too cold. So, so given the age and the deteriorating condition of our Dectron, it's certainly come time that we need to address replacing it. And to put it in perspective, if it fails, we're forced to shut down our aquatic center. We legally have to have a dehumidification unit to keep the environment safe, for our users, and so that it is keeping the air clean and what have you. We took a deeper dive into it, and closure of our aquatic center would result in probably an estimated net loss of about $240,000 plus annually. So that's taking a look at, sure, we subtract out the use of the lifeguard, paying out lifeguards, but also all the revenues that come in from our programs, our rentals, our campers who use the pool, and some of the other groups who come in and do rentals, and all the other, factors involved. And it hurts the community. So, the aquatic center, we have such a wonderful asset here in Saline. The closest public pool is going to be in Washington County on Mary Lou Murray Aquatic Center, and that's on Washington Platte. So that's quite some distance away. So this aquatic center provides a lot of health and wellness for a lot of people in our community. We obtained several quotes, and really the IMEG stood out for several reasons. One, they're a local company. They did our duct work back in 2015, did an outstanding job. That actually helped extend the life of the Dectron unit, so by being more efficient with the way the air handling, is going through the build, or through the aquatic center. And they have an extensive resume of working with aquatic center, so really it seems like a strong fit. They would be responsible for providing the design engineering of the entire system, so the HVAC system, the piping, the electrical, all that's involved. They would do put the contract documents together, get the bidding put together, and be available to answer questions to the different companies who would be doing the bidding. they prepare us an estimate of costs, again, it'd be a rough estimate going into it. And then they'd be available throughout the project, to answer questions. They would perform a minimum of 3 site visits throughout. So we feel like it's a good fit.
Good.
So, yeah.
Well, and congrats to you and your staff for prolonging the lifespan of this integral piece of technology that's vital to the center. And talk about cost savings and being fiscally prudent. That speaks to a goal not only of council, but to the city more broadly. Thank you for that. City Manager, any additional analysis or comment you'd like to provide before we open up for questions from the dais?
Yes, I just wanted to turn it over to Deputy City Manager Treasurer Cole to talk a little bit about the trends we've seen, to your point of fiscal responsibility in terms of the positive trends we're seeing on the rec center side.
Very good.
Do you want this?
Good evening. I just wanted to kind of report a little bit. Over the last couple of years since 2020, there has been additional use of general fund dollars to support the rec center. And I kind of wanted to give an update. This has always been the case. Prior to 2021, it was always less than $250,000. Given the circumstances that happened with COVID, everyone is experiencing, the contribution for FY22 was quite substantial. It was $680,000. For FY23, there was a good reduction down to $516,000. And FY24, we're looking at right now only $468,000. So that's another 10% reduction this year in the amount of dollars that go from general fund into the rec center currently.
And that trajectory is expected to continue in the current FY25 fiscal year. So we do see growth from the rec center, and certainly would feel extremely hesitant, to put it politely, in not investing in a solution for part of the facility that is the highest revenue generating for us.
Very good. Thank you for that. Questions for Parks and Rec Director, City Manager, or Assistant City Manager, City Treasurer? Councilmember CEO, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this is just the engineering design study. Any idea, once we finally get the bid documents together and so on, how long we would have to close while they change out the Dectron anyway?
Well, yeah, I think we would find out a little bit more through the design engineering. With the replacement back in 2004, we were looking back at that. There was a several-week closure. It really depends on placement of the unit and how much, once they get into it, how much, piping, electrical, things like that may need to be updated. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Gearbaugh, and then Councilmember Bryce.
Just a couple of things. I know that this year we've had a decrease in the revenue coming in for swim. How will that be? I mean, that's a concern because with $100,000 less, that money's going to have to come in from somewhere else. And now if we're going to be replacing this Dectron unit, $42,000 is nothing. I'm worried more about the $1 million plus that's going to be needed to do this Dectron and where those funds are going to come from.
So I can talk about like the programming and the revenues coming from the programming. We're getting ready to unveil a new and improved swim program. We're rebranding the program that we've offered. Our aquatic manager, Sarah Zetlow, has been working very diligently the past several months and will be branded the Saline Swim School. She has a lot of connections with Saline area schools and some of the other swimming agencies regionally. And so we're trying to really create a robust program that feeds into the school program. And we are now seeing an uptick in staffing, so we believe that we can handle that. That's really what hurt us, was the staffing. That was the biggest setback. It wasn't that there wasn't demand. It was the fact that we couldn't meet that demand because of the lack of staffing for instructors. So we have made up in some areas. We started a program called Take Your Mark. So it's we're working with Technique Group, and so they're doing some higher level training and utilizing our pool. So we're bringing in a percentage of, of those, sales that are taking place. So yeah, we want to be the place where everyone in Saline swims. That's our goal. We want to take some pride. So we've got a really cool program that's going to be coming out. It's going to be unveiled probably within the next month or so. Yeah.
Okay. So you understand where my concern is, that we lost $100,000 this year.
Absolutely.
At least $100,000 annually to pay for the Dectron unit. It's these rolling dollar amounts that keep coming through. Have we any chance to speak with the CARES Foundation or whatever, or the CARES program, to see if they can fund this, similar to what we've gotten money from them before for big expenses?
I have not yet, no.
Okay. I just want to recommend that. The other question I had is, when you were talking about all these other little components that have been failing, is that all part of this Dectron aspect that we're going to replace? So do we have any?
Not the RAPAC, not the building boiler, that's kind of a supplemental, but it's the Dectron, it's that big unit that sits up on top of the facility. So the RAPAC is our building boiler, which is on our first floor, and it kind of recirculates. It's the heat that comes off of that, the extra heat, gets sent up to the Dectron.
Okay. And as part of this engineering study, are they going to be looking at new technologies or anything else that we might potentially use instead of what we currently have in place?
Yeah, I would anticipate yes, because, obviously within the past 20 years has been,
changed.
And some interesting facts from the conversations that we've had, like, yes, it'll be more efficient, and you would think that it may be a bit smaller of a unit, but actually what we're finding is they could be a little bit bigger than what we currently have, so in terms of the size, yeah, which is really interesting, so, yeah.
And this may be something for the city treasurer. So will we be funding this over, similar like what we did just 5 years ago or before the pandemic, using bond money to pay for and then accumulate it, or are we going to try and use funds we already have on hand?
The initial thought, which we would be proposing to council after we receive the estimate from the engineers and a plan, was that we would loan the money from general fund to the rec center. This would allow for us, obviously, to not pay exorbitant interest rates at this current time, and also the flexibility for payment, whether that's sooner or later, without having to worry about incurring any fees.
I guess for me, that one is knowing that it's not generating the revenue now, to pay that back is going to be a whole situation. So we've had all these talks about money coming in from other outside sources. It hasn't come to fruition at this point. And then lastly, I guess, understanding that this is now another budget item that we haven't put in the budget. We did that with the boiler already earlier. I don't know if it was in 24 or 23 in the last 12 months. How many more items are we going to be hitting us that are outside of this budget this current year, do we anticipate, for repairs or whatever?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head here. We've let the facility get to a point where we're going to continue to experience issues because of the age of certain elements. Disinvestment isn't the solution, regardless of what the outcome with the facility is, whether we maintain the status quo, whether we grow it in the future. Heck, even if you are trying to sell the building to someone else in the future or have someone else take it over, no one wants a building that's in disrepair with facilities that are poorly managed. So I can't sit here and promise that in 6 months' time, there won't be something else at the facility that needs to be replaced. What we need is a more comprehensive strategy to do that, and that's really what we're looking for. The biggest piece of that puzzle, absolutely, hands down, is a Dectron. We know that that is, the million-dollar elephant in the room. These other items, we'd like to be able to present holistically as part of that when we have that information regarding the Dectron and say, here's the package for the immediate maintenance needs of this facility to maintain the status quo, just to keep the building safe, operational, and running with what it does now. Here's the options, if we want to expand in the future or do other things.
I mean, as I look at now, I know that we had one bond payment or debt servicing or whatever we were doing, about approximately $100,000 that came up this year.
Yep.
If we have to put that back in place to keep maintaining this Dectron unit, that seems reasonable. But that's,
Yep.
I'm looking at just maintaining what we have now.
Well, and I think if you
Big picture
take,
thing is, because of all these millage requests that's happening, even from the county at this next election, I don't know where we can take the hit anymore from the city's perspective. So.
yes, and that needs to be a realistic conversation that we have as well regarding just funding for recreation within the city. But to Councilmember Gearbaugh's point, yes, we had that about $135,000 debt payment dropping off this year. If we went out for a bond issue that was 20 years, or 15 years really, that could certainly service the debt. If we
Come up with a loan program internally for ourselves, then we can come up with more favorable terms to that end as well.
Excellent. Thank you. That's it.
Go ahead, Councilmember Rice, assuming that the microphone's working properly.
Yeah, let's see what happens. So, is there space for us right now when we are in the federal monies cycle to hit up our representatives? Or could we, as council, send another letter last year? It's not quite the right.
Recreation, rec center, wastewater treatment, water, then community gathering space as a third.
Absolutely, that was the next thing on my list. Write a letter like last year, question mark.
Yep.
Yep, perfect.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Rice?
Nope.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I think that we really need to have a holistic look at the rec center. I've been asking for quite some time to have a work meeting and kind of go through all of the finances, all of the plans, because I feel like we keep just sort of throwing darts at things, saying, well, this might work, and then it doesn't actually work for us. We might get this grant, or we might do this. We've got to kind of figure out a plan on our own. I mean, hopes and dreams is just not happening for us right now. And as much as I will absolutely write letters, right now, it's not what we need. We need to figure out what we're going to be doing with the rec center moving forward. I've got a couple of concerns about this. First and foremost, just so I understand, so Treasurer Cole, so we did in 2024, we contributed $468,000 from the general fund? Because wasn't it my understanding when we were budgeting that we said we were only contributing $150,000 to the rec center?
And so that was the direct contribution, but if you recall, we had a percentage of wages that we covered, and then it was an agreement.
Retirement.
The retirement contribution. So that includes all actions, not general fund direct appropriation to rec center, but all of the activities.
Okay.
Including the bond payments and.
Right. I think I just need to have a better understanding of that, and whether that's individually as collective, but I do think that having a group meeting would be very important. The other big issue with this right now is, first, there's one, when we talk about the proposal letter, it says specifically in it, it doesn't include engineering for fire services or plumbing or electrical beyond the very basic. So do we have any idea what those costs are going to be for additional engineering? And so, when we talk about 42,000, it doesn't sound like much, except for the fact that we're looking at pulling it from the Sauk Trail project.
Well, if you recall, that's not the Sauk Trail project. That also was the proceeds from a loan that the general fund made for a specific purpose and then was returned. There are no restrictions on that. the naming convention is really a misnomer. It's not assigned for any purpose.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you just sort of go through that again?
Sure. Do you want to explain, Treasurer Cole?
So we're playing musical chairs tonight with these microphones. I apologize. Originally, there was about $1 million that was loaned for the Salt Trail project, and it was given that description underneath the general ledger item. And so it was returned, the money was returned, and it's been sitting there for a number of years available for use. It has no restriction on it whatsoever.
Okay, so the money, where did that money come from?
That money originally came from general fund and was loaned for that project and then paid back to the city.
Okay.
We really should redesignate that after all this time. I mean, let me, if I can interrupt. When we did that loan, we kept that money in the Sauk Trail, in the LDFAs and everything, and then we finally moved the money back to the general fund, if I believe that's what we did. So just like all our other funds, if it's mistitled or has a different title, perhaps it's time to clarify and clean those all up and just say that was a loan payment and it's back, and just remove that Sauk Trail.
And we have discussed either reassigning it for, I guess, unexpected capital needs. You could just put it back into fund balance reserve. But we've generally been using it for unexpected capital needs, of which this would meet that criteria.
Okay. So I understand, and I mean, obviously, we have to have an engineering, study done in order to kind of, that we're not going to Lowe's and buying these parts to put up on the top of the building. So I understand that we need to do that. I mean, understanding what is the time frame, how long is it going to take them to do this engineering study? And then what do we do in the meantime in understanding this? Oh, we have another microphone. Send this one down. So I guess that's my understanding is trying to figure out the timing of everything. And I mean, how long will it take to engineer? How long will it take to, to bid? And then how long to build? And can we limp that long?
That's a great question. So I would anticipate it's probably going to take a couple of months just for the design engineering to do everything that needs to be done to put all the documents together and to kind of, for the full scope of service. This is a custom-built piece of machinery. So it's not that you can just go order it and, it has to be custom built to our environment, to the size of our aquatic center, to the way our mechanics all is. So we are anticipating it could take up to a year, for this to happen. So that's why it's really critical that we get the ball rolling now.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess, so well, then what is the plan then? I mean, because that $1 million can evaporate in a year of putting Band-Aids on things to fix them.
Well, and that's the point. We don't want to be in a situation of continuing to put Band-Aids on things. We want to be in a situation where we know what it's going to cost us to replace that unit so we can make educated decisions about whether a fix is necessary or whether we can kind of prolong the life of it just to that point of replacement. One of the things that we've talked about even is there may be a possibility of keeping that unit in service if we're able to build the new unit on the side of the building as opposed to on the top. So it's all going to be looked at. But at this point, we don't have that technical skill to answer those questions in-house. We need a professional service provider to help us kind of sort through these things so that we can make better informed decisions.
And then what other big needs are on the horizon for the rec center?
There's the Mars site in the pool that we've talked about numerous times, and then there's the pool deck. You're getting a grant for the ADA doors.
Yeah, we put in for a grant for the ADA doors that go the hallway down to the pool area. But yes, the Mars site, it's critical that we address that, which, city manager and I and our treasurer, we've been talking about the timing of this project and to see if that, potentially with the Mars site, we could get that taken care of, especially if the pool will be shut down for some time, because it does require the draining of those bodies of water. So when you drain, especially the lap pool, that's probably a good 2 weeks, to be able to drain it, fix it, refill it, get the chemicals right, and bring it back up to temperature. So,
right.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I want to kind of understand, that, sort of big picture of understanding what other equipment you have, that I know pretty much everything is probably beyond the end of its useful life.
It's beyond. I know we were looking pre-pandemic. We are researching the pool deck. It is well beyond its projected lifespan. I mean, if you have not been to the rec center, I really implore that you come see me. Let's walk through. I want you to see what it looks like, and see, it is in dire need of replacement. It's something that when we have our state inspections, that the inspector, every single year, there's comments made about that. So it needs to be addressed.
And I mean, at one point, we're going to have to kind of look at this holistically and decide whether we can, as a city, afford to keep doing this. And I mean, that right now is the elephant in the room, is that we keep putting money into it, and we're not seeing the benefit on the backside. And I know we've talked about a whole big redesign and this and that, but it's a huge expense on our residents right now. And we really have to kind of prioritize what we're going to do with it and figure out and find a plan and find a funding source, or we're going to have to find a different direction. And so I think we've hit a critical point that we do need to have a sit-down and sort of understand.
If I may, I'm happy to facilitate and organize a sit-down. That's never been communicated to me that was a desire from anybody at this dais. So if you send a message or an email and I missed that, please by all means resend it.
I will.
Is there consensus from this group to organize a work meeting in the not-too-distant future to holistically address the rec center? I have no objections to that. I just didn't know that was the consensus or desire of this body. Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like it's time.
All right, we can chat and maybe find a date either later this month or early November.
Yeah, I mean, I would think we're not going to have the information we need to have that conversation until we have some more information from this engineering study. So that's really been the delay in further conversations. We're not trying to kick the can down the road.
Sure.
It's just realistically, we have a lot of questions to answer regarding what funding sources are available to us, which we've been going through those motions to figure out, regarding what costs we are expected to incur, either just in a maintenance situation or in a growth situation. And we're always happy to have the conversation. I think perhaps on or around the time that we present our audit, at the very least, we could look at how the fund has been performing and what is projected to perform at in the future. But I just want to set expectations that staff's not realistically going to have hard numbers about rec center capital projects probably until our regular capital improvement process in January, February.
I'd prefer to wait till then.
Well, we can talk
Yeah.
and maybe report out at the next meeting or via one of your weekly communiques. Any additional questions, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
No, I'll stop there, thank you.
Any additional questions for city staff? We have a motion on the floor, then moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve, or to authorize or not authorize?
Move to approve and authorize.
I'll second that.
Moved by CO to approve and to authorize, seconded by Lesh. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Appears to be none. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to reports and other announcements, including updates from commissions, committees, and any of our municipal boards. I'll start to my left this evening and then to my right. Councilmember Harmount, any reports or updates from committees or commissions?
I do not.
Councilmember Rice.
Nothing from committees or commissions, as we have yet to meet this month, but I would like to thank the community who came out for a community developed project called Building Bridges. The members of the community who helped organize that have met since we had that event at Hennifield a couple of weeks ago. And we do intend to have a couple more of those events. There was a lot of interest shown online, so reach out to the pastor of Saline Presbyterian if you're interested. But I was really pleased as a member of the community and to show that city leadership was supportive of these types of conversations that we're having. So I thank everyone who showed up. I am so impressed with how the community can rally around something and do something, that was small yet impactful. And I look forward to doing more things like that in the future.
It was a very nice event. Thank you for your leadership on that. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
I don't think I have any reports on our committees. We did meet again with the risk management and welcomed El Cole as another member who's helping to implement the risk management, and our new member, sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Nick? We're both.
We're both drawing blanks, but he does
was
this
his
by,
first amendment. This is his background,
yeah.
and he was a great addition to it because he provides yet another risk management approach to what he's done.
And he's also, if I may be so bold, he's also a younger person.
Yes.
And we could use some, I'm also getting over the hill. People said I've been over the hill for the past decade. But no, we could use some younger voices on our various municipal boards and commissions. I apologize, Mr. Gearbaugh. Please continue.
And maybe Chris, do we have a meeting on Wednesday?
No, we do not.
Okay.
I was waiting to see if we got any plans in from the last planning commission meeting.
Okay. Just I noticed on one of the things, the calendar, where we post on our Facebook page, the calendar, could we make sure that we validate that we're actually going to have a meeting when we put that reminder out for the week? Last week, not for you, Chris, but this week we had one, and last week the zoning board meeting was canceled too. So if we know that stuff in advance, if we could remove that off of that announcement. No, I figured for you. We'll give you a couple of weeks. Okay. And then lastly, I just want to let council know, the city manager has been discussing, and I believe this information has been being discussed with property uptown and the potential of a redevelopment of it. And as you all know, my property is behind there, and there's a reverter clause on the property that was basically forcibly pushed and removed from my parents nearly 30 years ago through eminent domain, and we had agreed to do some type of a settlement agreement on it. At this point in time, there's some talk about redeveloping and using that property differently, and because I would have a conflict of interest should that arise, I just want to let you all know that I'm trying to be publicly disclosing that at this time. For me, as the city knows, that was a very traumatic express of issue for my parents, and at this time, and how that is reused and how it is appropriately used for the public's benefit is a major concern for me. So at this time, I just need to let you know that I will do whatever I need to, and hopefully, working with the city, we can come to an arrangement that seems feasible at this time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for acknowledging that. Nothing about harvest time at the farm?
Oh, thanks. It was very short. Yesterday, we had about 160 people visit. We had a little bit of a harvest time. We had some pumpkins. We got a few pumpkins left over. But we want to appreciate everybody that came out. I think there's just so many events going on now and yesterday was such a gorgeous day. We've never had a harvest time where it's been like 75 degrees and I was wearing shorts. So we know that October is now becoming more of an eventful month, so whatever we can do for it. And we look forward to a library event that's going to happen on the 15th at the Depot. If you want to attend, that's for, it needs to be a register, so you sign up with the library. And then our next big event will be Christmas at the Farm in December.
Very good. I have two things. One, when we get to the end of the day, as perhaps Mr. Adkins can introduce himself to the community, but we're delighted to have him on board as our new community development director. He can talk a little bit about his credentials and experience, but he comes to the city of Saline with a lot of perspective and a lot of depth, and I expect some great things from him in the ensuing years, and we very much look forward to working with you, Chris. I wanted to confirm that the Senior Center is going to be hosting a little candidate meet and greet and coffee this Friday at 10 o'clock for local candidates. I'll also have some information on our charter amendments. That'll be at 10 o'clock. I expect, I was having an email exchange with the executive director of the Senior Center today. I think they're going to put some information out in the next, hopefully, 24 hours, although I know they've already announced it internally at events at the Senior Center, and they'll be sharing a social media post as well. But we'd really like city council candidates or incumbent city council members to be there. Again, 10 o'clock this Friday, which I believe is the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. And an invitation will also be extended to other candidates, especially Saline School Board candidates as well. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any reports, announcements, or updates from committees or commissions?
Sure. The Cable Commission will be meeting tomorrow, but in the meantime, as you alluded to earlier, Mayor, we were able to outfit the council chambers with some new equipment. We're very excited to have the television mounted now, which sort of frees up some space so we can kind of continue to have all staff in one area, not sort of out in the corner anymore. And we are very excited about our new podium. It is an ADA accessible podium. It is automatic. It can adjust from a very low height to a very high height. And seeing it in use tonight, I was very excited that everybody could speak into the microphone and had a work surface on which to lay out papers or computers on. So I'm very excited about those things. And we have a new clock that the audience can't see, but we're very excited about that from this side. The Fire Board met recently, and we are continuing to update our bylaws and review and address the risk mitigation analysis. We actually have an upcoming special meeting on November 6th. It's an afternoon meeting at 1 p.m., and that is to work through some strategic planning that we are starting to do as far as that. That meeting is open to the public, but it is a planning meeting, not necessarily a business meeting. I want to remind people that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that there are resources available for those in need. And if you need safe access to a phone, you are always welcome to come to City Hall, and there are phones available for you to use. They will be made available to you, and there are a lot of resources that we can provide. The last thing I want to touch upon is that recently, Councilmember Rice and I had an opportunity to attend the Michigan Municipal League's annual convention. This year it was held on Mackinac Island, so that was a little bit of a perk, which was nice. But it was a great opportunity to really kind of explore some new things in municipal government. There were a couple of overarching themes this year. First were thriving communities and placemaking, which are paramount to successful communities. The second was AI, and Councilmember Rice can probably at some point talk a little bit more about that. We got some great materials, but she can probably delve into that a little bit deeper. But really in how you can use AI technology to improve efficiencies and quality of municipal services. It's absolutely amazing. Councilmember Rice and I also had an opportunity to participate in an interactive exercise using Saline as the model during a Thriving Community session. And it's definitely an exercise that I think it would be a great thing for us to do in-house with council and staff. And it's hard to explain without, it's a very visual thing. I also had an opportunity to moderate a breakout session which introduced a new free service that MML has introduced called the My Funding Hub. And it's an interactive online grant tool that provides a database style repository for local, state, and federal, and also private grant opportunities. So it's sort of a one-stop shop. And they've got a live help desk to help communities identify, what you can possibly qualify for and help people go through the grant process. So I think that's a resource that would be very beneficial to the city. There were a lot of breakout sessions on topics like elections and housing and small business ecosystems and so many more. Like I said, there was a lot of great information. We got a lot of information to bring back that we can provide the handouts to council. There's also a lot of the presentations are now online. But one of the big key learning aspects for me is always going to the legislative updates, which is done by our lobbyists. There are several key pieces of legislation right now that will impact Saline. First and foremost, short-term rentals. This is an issue that we have been kicking around for some time. We need to get something in writing about this. We have to have a definitive position prior to the state taking action. That is the constant reminder. This will protect neighborhoods and allow communities to balance housing needs. Also on the horizon are zoning reforms and mobile home property tax exemptions for EV charging stations, the disabled veterans property tax reimbursement, there's minimum staffing requirements, and there's franchise fees. There's a lot of different pieces in play right now that we need to keep a really close eye on because they can impact us as a community. But I just want to sort of end by saying how much I really appreciate that the city and the council values learning. And it can get expensive to go, especially at something like Mackinac. but I hope you find the value in sending us to go. I find value in attending, so I just want to again say thank you for that.
Thank you, appreciate the update. Councilmember CO, reports, other announcements, or updates from boards or commissions?
Just want to say a big thank you to the entire community for their participation in and their help with the Oktoberfest a week ago, last weekend. It's the biggest fundraiser we have is the Saline Lindenberg Sister City group selling bratwurst and sauerkraut. Many of the people here participated actively in the entire thing, cooking and preparing and working. I know it was an exhausting couple days, but I'm proud to announce that it contributed, I think, a record amount to our coffers for our organization. It's the single biggest fundraising event that we have to help us when we sponsor our Lindenberg Sister City visitors coming, and they are coming next year, 2025, May through June. So they'll be here for about a 2-week period, and we'll be taking them on trips down into Ohio, around Michigan to various places. And if you think costs are going up for the things that you're involved with, they're really going up for things like travel and lodging and food. So I've been frankly really shocked by how much it's cost in us preparing the estimates for this visit. But thank you to everybody for helping to participate and allowing us to have another successful year in selling bratwurst and earning this money that we need. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Lesh, any reports, announcements, or updates from committees?
Just a shout out to Director Lambert, the guys from DBW, and the citizens who came out to help plant trees the other week. Very nice day to do that.
Very nice. Mr. Adkin, could I be so bold to ask you to introduce yourself and share a few remarks about your background? Maybe some things you'd like to, yeah, hell yeah. Have at it. You can actually be the first person to officially adjust it if it's not use of your height. Or the first one to break the microphone. It should be on, yeah.
All right.
If you need the desk higher, there should be like an up and down little switch to your right.
Just your right.
No. Okay, so.
Desk is easier, it's literally.
No,
The whole table moves up and
I
down.
know, I know, I'm just being. Okay, so yes, I am Chris Atkin. Many of you I've worked with before. I was a consultant with Carlisle Wortman for 6 years or so, and Saline was one of my clients, and it was 3 or 4 years I was here. I don't remember. I'm finding various documents with my name on it. I just can't pin down the amount of time. I know it was up until 2021. So from there, I went over to the city of Jackson. That was my second go-around with city. I was there from 2013 through 2015. Then I went to CWA, and Jackson got into a bit of a bind and asked me if I'd like to come back and be the director of planning and their zoning administrator in Brownfield and Historic District staff. So I did that for the past just under 3 years, and then came back here. Really enjoyed my time here as a consultant, and I liked the direction that the city was going. Ben did a lot of good things. He set a really good foundation for, I wouldn't necessarily call it zoning reform, but we're getting there. And to just touch on what you said about zoning reform, it's a moving target. It has been for a number of years now, with over restrictive codes and things like that. There's a gray area as to what's not enough, what's too much, and you just don't want things to become a free-for-all. So I've been keeping an eye on that too through newsletters and other information that's been put out through the state, through MML. So, but I appreciate everybody welcoming me on board. I look forward to being here for, well, I can check out in 15 years, so, it's kind of my goal.
I'm going to hold you to it.
What's that?
I'm going to hold you to it.
That's fine, that's fine. I'm good with that. So, but yes, thank you, and contact information is the same as Ben's was, so if you need to reach me, minus the email, but phone numbers, cell and office are the same, so, all right.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Last item is disposable containers, and if my memory serves me correctly, Mr. Seo, you added this as a discussion item?
I did. We just, I brought this up as a discussion, or a very brief discussion item at our last council meeting, and it was suggested that I go back to the Environmental Commission and come forward with a recommendation from them. The trouble is that even though we send out information with the permit application and so on, that we want people to use recyclable containers for food so that we're not contributing to the solid waste trash flow in the city with these special events and so on that we have, vendors just are not complying. So our recommendation, after some consideration at our last meeting, was that we proposed to the council that you adopt a resolution that would state that as part of the permitting process for food vendors, they have to pay a $100 deposit that would be refundable after the event, and that they actually used disposable containers for the food that they provided. So that would be our proposal to the council, to try and encourage them to come forward with these things. Apparently, they're not doing it just to their own volition. And I don't think there's a malicious intent to kind of subvert the request. I think what's happening is a lot of these are volunteer organizations. A lot of them don't pay a whole lot of attention, and there's not a lot of continuity between people in their planning processes. So I think some of these things just get lost in the shuffle. So if they have to put some extra money on the table, it's only refundable at the conclusion, and the Environmental Commission would send people around these various events to do spot checks to make sure that they are complying with the request. Then based on the Environmental Commission's recommendation at the conclusion, they could be refunded if they complied.
So, Mr. Seo, is it your intent as the liaison from City Council to the Environmental Commission that this request be formalized and included as an action item at our subsequent council meeting in October?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Okay. And maybe this is a question for you, perhaps for the city manager or her staff. Has this proposal been evaluated and vetted by staff yet so that they can provide some comment and context when council considers the issue?
Not at all.
Not yet.
This is the first time that I've sprung it on anybody.
Yeah, I would say from staff's perspective, it would be great if we had some summary notes from the Environmental Commission, and then I can work with Clerk Royal to see what changes would need to be made inside of our existing policy and application process, and present something to council if that's what you all are amenable to or the direction you're providing.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself, of course. I'm happy to support and encourage the Environmental Commission to formalize their request to submit it to you, but I'm not going to commit to any particular action until I've had an opportunity to evaluate it and hear comments from staff. But I would welcome this item as, I would welcome inclusion of this item in our, one of our upcoming agendas. Let me just start at one end of the dais, and I'll work my way from the left to right. So, Councilmember Harmon, any comments on this?
This has been a struggle for several years, and we've adopted this guidelines, and it doesn't seem like it's been, we've had a difficulty with overall adherence, and I think that by doing this, it's really going to send the message that we are supporting more sustainability in our festivals.
Very good. Councilmember Rice?
Yeah, we've talked about this a number of times. I think what I would also like to see, in addition to city staff from the Environmental Council Commission, whether or not you all have looked at other cities and how they apply this and how they get folks to comply with it.
Very good. Mr. Gearbock?
Just one of the things, can you evaluate and let us know how the actual whole vendor thing is working? We've heard back and forth sometimes some comments about the process and such, just to help us understand exactly how well it's working. Have there been any concerns or issues with vendors in terms of?
Like mobile food vendors or?
Yeah, I
just-
guess
okay.
whoever this is going to impact, because if we're only going to do this for mobile vendors, I mean, we have the whole community that uses disposable and so there seems like this is like a little bit, but there's a bigger picture to it. But for me, it's understanding the whole mobile vendor process and to making sure that what kind of administrative problems will this occur? You know, you're having to track you're tracking deposits. We're going to have to declare those. I know you're going to have to declare those as outstanding credits because that was an issue I think I understand with the rec center. When you have credits out and deposits. So there's a lot of things to this, but just all those pieces. But I'd like to make sure that we haven't created another burdensome administrative process.
Yeah, and that's why I say I'd really like to see kind of a formal recommendation from the Environmental Commission that I can then work with my team to vet and figure out how it compares, how we benchmark that to other communities, and how it could be implemented, what challenges or pitfalls may exist.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. I think that the policy committee should be a part of that path at some point to kind of work through it. I think that's what that's there for. But as I want to sort of follow up on what Mr. Gearbaugh was just saying. So if we're going to implement something for vendors at festivals, then we need to look at all vendors. I mean, I don't want to just say, oh, you can't do this. So it would have to be all of our food truck vendors. And then it's also very difficult to say, well, we're going to put this requirement on our mobile vendors when we don't put it on our brick and mortars. So, I mean, do we as a community want to say that we are no longer going to embrace styrofoam or that it has to be compostable? But I mean, I think that we have to have a more holistic view and sort of understand of what exactly is the end goal. Because yes, we do produce a lot at a festival, but is that more than what we produce in general as a community? So I really would like to look at that. I think that there's definitely other communities that have environmental policies as far as their to-go containers. And we have a lot of our businesses right now that do use compostable products. And so, you know, we had talked years ago, I don't really understand whatever happened with their bulk purchasing. We had talked about that program, and I think that never sort of grew out. And maybe somebody needs to sort of dust that off and see if that's something we need to do too. But sort of understanding where that sort of falls in your priorities is also something that we need to figure out. And so I think that at some point we're going to have to start to assign things of value by a point system, because it's like, does this now go to the top because we want to talk about it at the next meeting? And then, so I guess I just want to sort of understand that from a standpoint.
City Manager O'Toole, correct me if I'm wrong, it appears that Mr. CEO, on behalf of the Environmental Commission, is recommending a policy, not an ordinance. So the protocol for the policy committee is that they review proposed ordinances. Am I correct?
That is correct, though I will give credit on this one because it is a public policy, not an internal policy. It wouldn't be entirely inappropriate for the policy review board or the policy subcommittee to take a look at that before it comes. It's definitely, our special event policies, our mobile food vendor policies are a little unique in that regard.
Okay. So obviously we need to hear from Councilmember Lesh, but I guess my recommendation, noting your comments, is once Mr. CEO and his colleagues on the Environmental Commission get you and your staff what you need, and you're able to evaluate and take a look at it, maybe it can be forwarded first to the policy committee before they make a formal recommendation to this body.
Yes, yeah, I think that would be fair.
Mr. Lashany, I didn't mean to steal any of your thunder or diminish in any way your sentiments on the matter, but what thoughts do you have on the issue?
Well, I'm, again, a firm believer in not reinventing the wheel, so I mean, I think if we can find out what some of the other communities do, that would be a big help to start anyway. So.
Fair enough.
I'll be happy to carry this back to the Environmental Commission. Obviously, our primary concern was some of these festivals that we have in the community. I certainly understand the point of view about brick and mortars and so on. So because we're approaching a season probably where even a lot of these mobile vendors won't be as popular because of the colder weather, that's approaching. I think I have a bit of a respite here, and I'm gonna be gone a good bit of time during the next few months too. So I'll take it on myself and take it back to the Environmental Commission. Be happy to do that, and I'll be happy to communicate too with other communities nearby. I'm sure we have some like-minded communities in the area. I'd be happy to reach out to them and then develop a more formal policy. I'll write it up. I'll talk to the clerk and the city manager further about this issue, and then come back with a formal written request that will go through the policy committee.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. We look forward to revisiting the issue as an entire council sometime in the coming months. If there's nothing further to be brought up during the discussion portion of tonight's agenda, we come now to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is, of course, requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record. And again, you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Go very quick. Welcome on board. We need a community leader like you. And the last name is? Atkin. So hard for me to pronounce it. Special thanks to CEO Lash and Maro. Great support and leadership of the Oktoberfest is went very well, and really happy to see so many people come in, and that set up the good things for the city of Saline and good image, and also people really like some people from Canada, and I really had good time, and I learned quite a lot. And then especially if the CEO works so hard and cook and all of the things, you should teach me how to cook American food. I like to give some comment, echo Mrs. Rice and Dylan about the housing, especially rental, this issue. In this country has a problem, so as China. The DigiCore rate is so high right now, which is rich and poor, gap is bigger and bigger. Housing, zooming, all of the things is not just simply economy, but also politically so important. Saline is a great city. I think that we have to really consider in long-term impact of this housing issue. Saline is the best city. Everybody want to come here, especially people who have money. And also they really like the environment and everything. That's the problem for the people who do not have a whole lot of money, but they contribute quite a lot. I would really just appreciate that we think bigger pictures, demographically, politically, and spiritually. We have to really think about the people who really do for 50, 60 hours. They don't have a whole lot of money, but they serve the people like, in Mill Pound, and also Saline Social Services, a lot of people, they are not rich. So therefore, we have to really think about it. And I do know that, Mr. Mayor, you talk about the CIP. What is that? Capital Improvement Program. And that's important. But also, we have to understand that what happened in this world, rich and poor, gap is bigger. We're just next to Ann Arbor. If you really look at that, why the price of that higher and higher? Because more and more people can afford that, get a higher education, but how about those people in the middle? Middle class is splitting. So that's one thing which is so hard for you on a hot seat to make the final decision. I do think that it's a great presentation. However, we have to really think bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional citizen comments this evening? Please, you have 3 minutes.
I just had 2 questions. One was the traffic study that was going to be done for this project. Who is doing that traffic study, or what is the process in which it's performed and then given to the city council for evaluation?
Mary, why don't you ask both of your questions, then we'll finish the public comment period and we'll respond at the end.
The second question was more of just a thought. You mentioned the pool. I don't know if you have looked into installing a geothermal system. They're becoming more usable in Michigan, and the overall expense up front is a lot. However, the upkeep is a lot less over time, and I think it would be a good investment, just so you don't have any of those upkeep issues later on. And they last a very long time, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Very good. Thank you. Don't believe we have any additional citizens in the audience at this hour. Clerk Royal, did we receive any written comments in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? No, sir. Easy enough. City Manager O'Toole, to the most recent comment about traffic study, can you take 30 seconds to outline that process one more time?
Sure. So the developer will be required to submit a traffic study that shows either that their current design meets our existing standard or that some revised design that they're submitting meets those standards. And then our engineering team will review it to determine if they have comments, questions, concerns, or disagree with any of the statements contained in that study, at which time it would then be reflected in the final site plan that the developer submits for approval to the Planning Commission. After Planning Commission final site plan approval, it'll come back to City Council.
So the traffic study itself is done by a third party?
Yes.
Okay, so then, yeah, that was what I was wondering if they were going to do, because, and it's going to be the stretch between Woodland and Bennett.
And also on Waterworks Road.
Okay, Waterworks, yes, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and then to your questions about geothermal, I might have you connect with our Parks and Rec director subsequent to tonight's meeting, but I hope I'm not stealing any of your thunder. I'm not aware that we've ever done, pun intended, a deep dive into a geothermal replacement for our pools. But if you had some data or some material that you could either forward or share with us, we'd love to take a look at it.
Okay, all righty. Yeah, I can look up some.
Thank you. Appreciate your attendance this evening. If there's nothing further to be brought before City Council this evening, the chair would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:10.
So moved.
Moved by Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.